Hello, my loves, and welcome to the podcast. Finally, we created the space to actually sit down and set everything up and welcome you into this space. So I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I wanted this first podcast to be around why a podcast, like what my intention is for this space, and really to give you a little bit more insight into my personal journey. So my intention for this space is to really be a space where you get to give yourself the permission to do and be whoever you want to be. This is a space of celebrating women. This is a space of bringing women together and allowing you to really get curious with your own journey and seeing if we can come back to this space where we just get to be like in full alignment and unity versus comparison or separation or anything like that. So I am setting my intention to interview some really beautiful women. I feel there is so much power when we get to share our stories and actually create a space where women get to actually really own their voice and really own their sense of self-expression and to be vulnerable and to feel held and to really surrender to whatever wants to come up during our conversations together. So that is my intention for this space. My intention in life in general is always to hold space for women, to really lift them up, to remind them of who they truly are, to strip away those layers that society has put on us, or all these layers of who we think we should be, and come back to our beautiful, unique self. Because if we can't express our uniqueness in this life, then are we really living? Are we really living our life? Because for me, I believe that we are all born with our own unique codes, our own unique gifts, our own unique ways of actually being of service in the world. And to really uncover that and to really honor that journey and that path. So there you go. There's a little quick insight. Where to begin? I really feel that there is a space for women's voices to be heard. I feel this is a beautiful time for really like bringing things to the forefront and really claiming not only our voices again, but in a very unified way, away from this feminist movement where we kind of disempowered the masculine and, coming back into this beautiful embodied feminine. And we're just going to explore everything. Please know that I am not perfect. I am learning. I am growing. I am evolving constantly. I'm shedding layers. I am exploring all the depths within myself. And I want to share that rawly and authentically with you. I'm not, there's no sense of this is what is right or this is what is wrong. It's like, let's create a space where we get to be curious and we get to actually explore things for ourselves. So just putting it out there, still on the journey as always, still exploring. And today just happens to be the first day of a fast that I'm doing. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes up over these next 5 days. I've got my water right here, lovely spring water. And fasting is something that has been a massive part of my journey in terms of really coming to this place of, can I let go more? Can I surrender more? Can I let go of attachments? Can I let go or simply be with emotions or stories that come up? So yeah, that's massive. And I'm looking forward to sharing this experience and holding this space as well for those of you who are with me doing this fasting. So let's take it back. Who is Simone when she was a child? As a child, I was very high energy. I was such a tomboy. I just wanted to be running through the trees. My imagination was wild. I wanted to be a fairy or a mermaid. I loved the sea. And I spent a lot of time in the garden. I remember just driving my mum nuts. She was used to really love her garden. And I would be picking all the roses and bashing the roses up, trying to make my perfumes. And so I always had this sense of imagination and exploration. And I also always had this like very strong-willed mind. For some reason, I used to hate my hair being washed when I was little. And apparently every time it was time to wash my hair, it was like a circus act. My parents chasing me around the house, me screaming. And, my dad would say he'd pick me up and I would kick him so hard in the chest that he would have to put me down. And, he's always said you've always had a very strong mind. No one could tell you what to do and no one could force you to do anything that you didn't want to do. So I feel like that's something that's always kind of been within my spirit, is this ability to really have my own mind and to be very strong-willed. So it never fazed me if I was going against the grain or if I was not fully accepted in crowds or anything like that. It never really unsettled me. It was like, well, this is what I want and this is what feels good for me, and I'm just going to do it. And yeah, for sure, it got me into lots of trouble as well growing up, as you do going through school. So I moved around a lot, and I actually feel like this is a real beautiful blessing of my journey, because it allowed me to see different ways of living very early on and allowed me to see both sides of the spectrum, living in like abundance in the material world and not, and fully feeling and experiencing the other side of that too when I was little. And I always felt this sense of gratitude for seeing both sides of it, and really, really taking the lessons from that and really cultivating this belief in myself of knowing that I could create anything I wanted, that my past didn't have to actually determine what my future was. Because, I experienced it. I was, in quite a rough school growing up with my mum. My mum, she was a single mum. My dad left back for Iran when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. I can't remember exactly. I was quite young. Dad left to go back to Iran after they got divorced. And so my mum was holding the fort. And in that school in Southampton, it was rough. And there was, it was this matter of survival. You had to be really tough and you had to put those layers and shields on before you went into school. And I remember being told, I remember coming up to GCSEs and being like, well, Simone will be lucky if she just about gets all C's. Anyway, lots of changes in circumstances. Mum really needed help and she was in a very toxic relationship. And I've been incredibly blessed with lots of angels in my life, and I've seen Mum as an angel in my life as well. The lessons that she's taught me through me seeing what she's gone through, and actually seeing my mum go through what she's gone through is a massive part of why I feel really drawn to empowering women, because I've seen my mum struggle. I've seen my mum go through some horrific things, and I still see and have always seen the beauty and the love within her, and always wishing that she could really feel and see this for herself. And so she's been a real angel of mine in terms of really infusing this flame of wanting to bring women so much love so that they can really come back to fully loving themselves deeply, fully embodying themselves, and fully believing in themselves, of being fully worthy, whole, and complete already in this moment without changing a thing. So thank you, Mama. That was, she's been a massive light in that way for me. And then I was always very fortunate that I had lots of angels in my life. My auntie is a massive angel in my life, and my uncle. And when I was, and my grandparents. So when I was 8, I moved to Cayman Islands with my grandparents. And this was a massive light for my soul during this time. I was so active. I had so much energy. And in Cayman Islands with my grandparents, I felt like I could swim and I could bike, and it was very outdoors, and I felt so free. And, my grandparents, no one's perfect. They all have their flaws, and they're also very unapologetically themselves. And my grandma's very expressive. She's, this beautiful dancer. She is fearless in her expression and flirtation with life. With life, she just kind of does whatever she wants to do unapologetically. And my grandpa is like this beautiful, magical, loving man who has the most incredible way of bringing people together. He holds space with his stories. He's just the most incredible storyteller. And I love them so deeply. So I was, there for a year or 2, but we kept going back there every school holiday for a lot of my childhood. And this time really showed me another way of living. Everything was very light, everything was very expansive and expressive. And we felt totally held, my sister and I. And not, as I said, no home situation is perfect. It came with its own challenges. And overall, it felt like my little child loved the environment of the sea, the warmth, the tropics, of being in a school that felt super supportive because it was tiny, and really making some beautiful friendships and getting out of my comfort zone, trying things that I'd never tried before, like American football, which I was hopeless at. I'm tiny and I've got small legs and I'm not a sprinter. So, but it was all part of the fun. And then fast forward around 10, I came back to the UK and I went to boarding school, not far from Stonehenge. And that was a massive thing. So all the while, moving around a lot got me to really experience different things and different ways of living, and to cultivate ways that I felt really lit up by from an early age. Boarding school for me was a massive wake-up call, as I've shared on the podcast with my love, Moihu. A lot of the time when I felt anger or I felt frustration when I was younger, because I was very fiery. I mean, I would get teased for being moody when I was a little girl. When I had this fire energy going through me, what I would do to move it was to move my body. So when I was 8, I would run. And as young as I can remember, I was doing sit-ups on the floor. I just had to move my body. And when I'd left Mum, I didn't realize at the time, but I'd obviously become extremely worried about her, because when I was with her, at least I knew what was going on. And when I wasn't with her, then I felt this sense of, I really don't know if she's okay or not. And now I've got no way of knowing, because, she's not going to tell me really what's going on with her. And so I remember as soon as I could at boarding school, I was in the gym, I was training every day. That was my way of dealing with things. And I wasn't long, I was 14, and then I found out I had shingles. And I didn't know for quite a long time, because, you don't know until you know. So that was a massive wake-up call, in the sense of it showed me how everything that I'd been pushing down emotionally, my body was holding it. And it just got to a point where my body was like, no more, that's enough. You know, I was isolated in what they call a sanatorium for 2 weeks. I was bedbound and no school, very little visitors, totally on my own in a room. And of course I could have visitors at the time as well, but it was the first time I'd experienced like solitude, and to really sit with myself and to really not go to my go-to, which was moving and training. I couldn't do any of that. And then the school said, well, in order to come back into school, we're going to require that you go see a counselor, a school therapist once a week for the rest of your time at school. So that was 4 years of every week going to see this beautiful counselor in my school. And I feel incredibly grateful for that. Incredibly grateful that from a young age, I had that awakening that, oh, okay, my body responds to my emotions, firstly, and that there's no getting out of it. There's no getting out of it, because I was headstrong. I could be like, I'm good, I'm fine. And in fact, that was always my go-to. I'm good, I'm fine. I never really understood how to feel my emotions. I was always someone who bottled my emotions up and then I would explode, but rarely explode. So hence the shingles. And school life was a journey, was a real journey for me. And, but ultimately it was an experience where I felt actually it was the beginning of a lot of self-inquiry for me. And that was the beginning of my journey with really understanding, what am I holding on to? What do I get to shed? And who am I really? Not the Simone that family has perceived me to be, not the Simone that friends have perceived me to be, but who is Simone really underneath everything that I've learned. And because we all learn our identity through what gets rewarded and what gets punished when we're growing up. So it was really the beginning of that. And I always felt incredibly fortunate with this. I always felt connected to the unseen, to magic, to this sense that we're always guided. Like my grandpa always, for example, whenever he'd see a white feather, he would say, oh, that means an angel is close by. And I remember with my auntie, we'd go for walks in the forest and she'd get us to hug a tree. And she would, sometimes when she was on set, when she was filming, we'd sit in her car in a break. And I remember one night we were filming and it was really cold and it was really dark, and we were probably, in the countryside in England. And I remember my auntie being like, okay, I want you to imagine that you're holding fire in your hands, and I want you to imagine how warm your hands are. And even her just planting little seeds like that for me when I was little was magic. And I remember after like 10 minutes, she was like, okay, let me feel your hands. And she was like, whoa, Simone, your hands are really hot. And it just always felt like this aliveness whenever it came to this idea of creating magic and being connected with the unseen worlds. And so that never left. It definitely, I've been on a mad journey with it, but it's never really left. And now it's coming to a place where it's like really diving into the magic. One of the most powerful messages I've been given was on my first ayahuasca journey, and that was probably around 6 years ago now. And that was a path in itself to even get to that point 6 years ago. But I remember it was magical. It was magical for many reasons, but for me in particular, the letting go, the real letting go of control. And so I'll leave you with this. I was left with an image of myself hanging off a cliff and beautiful Mother Aya with her hands beneath me, but quite away beneath me, saying, Simone, I cannot catch you unless you are willing to fall. My whole life up until that point, I'd been gripping on for dear life. And she was saying, you're safe, but I need you to let go now. And so from that point on, my journey has just continually evolved into the most wonderful and mystical ways, and also challenging. And I really always hold this dear to me because it's like, am I willing to let go here? Am I willing to allow myself to experience the magic in life, which only comes when I'm willing to surrender, when I'm willing to fall, and when I'm willing to allow myself to be caught by life, by source, by all the beautiful ancestors that stand behind me, and the way that life really is there to hold us all. So just breathe into that for a moment. And so I just give this to you. Where in your life does it feel like you're really holding on, where you're really trying to control an outcome? And how can you trust yourself to soften into that? Sending you so, so much love.